So, right on release day, I've got the new Who album in my hands. This is the Who Live at the Oval 1971, which honestly I pre-ordered months ago and forgot all about. But magical how with Amazon, you pre-order something months in advance for any other band but the Beatles, and you get it on release day. But if it's a Beatle release, I'm lucky if I see that shit like within 2 weeks of the release day, but I digress. So this one, I find it curious that they decided to release it the day before what would have been Keith Moon's birthday, as opposed to not just holding on to this for one more month and releasing it on the actual anniversary of the show in question, but I digress. So, I'm gonna go ahead and open this up. I mean, it's got the hype sticker on it still, so I'll read it off just for posterity's sake. The Who live in 1971, newly mixed from 8-track analog tapes. Features epic live versions of Summertime Blues, Behind Blue Eyes, Won't Get Fooled Again, and Magic Bus. So, I have to admit, I'd like to see them release more live shows from, I don't know, 1974, 76, you know, like the Quadrophenia tour or the Who by Numbers tour. I would love to see. But instead, we continue to get from this era. And I have to admit, the track listing doesn't look particularly inspired to me, so I don't know what to expect going in. I haven't even listened to it yet. You just watched me take the shrink wrap off, and you know how I go through these. I'll listen to it track by track and in real time give my feedback. But the track list on here, there's only 15 songs. I think the runtime probably only comes to about an hour, just like eyeballing that. But we've got So Glad to See Ya, Summertime Blues, My Wife, Love Ain't for Keeping, I Can't Explain, Substitute, Bargain, Behind Blue Eyes, Won't Get Fooled Again, Baby Don't You Do It, Pinball Wizard, See Me, Feel Me, Listening to You, My Generation, Naked Eye, and Magic Bus. So, I even double-checked to see, was this the full set list of that show, or is this an abridged version that they did for a release? No, this appears to be the full set list. Curious, right? Especially for the era when this was, but anyway. I like the album artwork on this. Apparently Pete's nephew did this, which is kind of cool. I saw some people swearing it was AI, but it's like, no, that's not AI, it was done by hand. The disc itself is very lackluster. After seeing that artwork, it's just like, you guys seeing this, my god. Do we have anything under the disc? Okay, we have a photo from that show, but I mean, you can only really see Pete leaping in the air and Entwistle off to the other end because the spindle in the middle is covering Keith and Roger, but it is what it is. So anyway, we'll take a look at the booklet first before I start diving into tracks here. I mean, it's a nice thick little booklet, so I'm curious to see what all is in here. And I'll read off anything that it's got. Okay, so far we've got just who plays what. We've got, like, some information about the release itself. To be fair, I mean, bootlegs of this show have been circulating for decades, so this isn't really new to most of us, but I digress. It'll be the first time hearing it cleaned up, I'll give it that. Okay, we have runtimes. Let's see how close I was. So let's see. Doing some rough math here. Oh shit, that was pretty close. I think that adds up to about an hour 16. That's pretty close. Alright. Alright, so we have a photo of the advertisement of the bill for that show. Again, not very, like, creative or anything. I'm actually surprised that it was that bland. But apparently on the bill that night, The Who headlined, then Rod Stewart and the Faces, Mott the Hoople, Lindisfarne, Quintessence, Jeff Dexter, Friends, and Grease Band. Back when tickets were only £1.25. Wow. Mind-blowing. But okay, so there's a nice little write-up piece in here. Definitely thought that was a photo of Ringo Starr for half a second. Okay, I'll read off the whole thing for those who don't have the physical album or are on the fence about actually getting it, so you guys don't have to miss out that way. 71 not out, The Who at the Oval. In 1971, rock festivals were still a relatively recent phenomenon in Britain. Throughout the late 50s and early 60s, annual summer jazz festivals had been held in the grounds of Lord Montagu's Beaulieu estate in Hampshire's New Forest. In 1961, the National Jazz Federation held the first of its yearly shindigs at the Richmond Athletic Grounds, Surrey, which would develop over the years into the Reading Festival. However, it wasn't until the late 60s that the idea of staging major outdoor events using rock music as the draw really took hold. In America, open-air music shows were firmly established with the jazz and folk festivals at Newport and Big Sur. The Monterey International Pop Festival in June 1967, a successful blend of artistry, commerce, and benevolence, laid the blueprint for almost every rock event that followed. The prominent example of Woodstock 2 years later amply demonstrated how the emergent rock counterculture was prepared to tolerate transport congestion, bad food, poor hygiene, and shocking weather to celebrate themselves and the music. In August 1968, the first Isle of Wight Festival, featuring Jefferson Airplane and the Crazy World of Arthur Brown, ran on a modest scale as the local fundraiser for the Isle of Wight Indoor Swimming Pool Association. It was staged by Fiery Creations Limited, a company set up by the enterprising Folk brothers, Ronald, Ray, and Bill, and their business associates Richard, Ricky Farr, a South Coast disc jockey/promoter, and the son of heavyweight boxer Tommy Farr. Knowing a commercial opportunity when they saw it, Fiery Creations scored the ultimate coup by persuading a reclusive Bob Dylan to headline the Isle of Wight Festival of Music the following year. The venture was a triumph, drawing in excess of 100,000 people at £2 to £10 a ticket. Their ambition never in short supply, the Folks and Farr planned the 1970 Isle of Wight Festival on an even bigger scale, expanding the event from 3 to 5 days and inviting Jimi Hendrix, The Doors, and making a return appearance The Who to headline. An estimated 600,000 people attended that third Isle of Wight festival, making it the largest ever British festival gathering, a record that still stands. However, from a logistical and financial point of view, it was a disaster. Antagonistic anarchists from Europe disrupted operations by breaking down the perimeter fence to allow people in, while countercultural agitators from the underground press demanded that the music should be free. Fervent opposition from the local authorities, plus Parliament's introduction of the Isle of Wight County Council Act, which prohibited overnight gatherings of more than 5,000 on the island without a special license, ensured there would be no further rock festivals on the offshore isle, a state of affairs that remained in place till 2002. During the same period, events like Bath Festivals in 1969 and 70, both featuring Led Zeppelin and run by Freddie Bannister, who later promoted the annual Nebworth Fair, plus the free concerts in London's Hyde Park, illustrated that the notoriously unreliable British summer was no obstacle to staging major outdoor shows. Throughout the summer of 1971, news headlines highlighted the desperate plight affecting refugees in Bangladesh, as the name was spelt at the time, following the devastating 1970 Ebola cyclone and the war in East Pakistan. When his friend Ravi Shankar praised him of the situation, George Harrison organized 2 charitable concerts at Madison Square Garden in New York City on August 1st. A critical and commercial success, the concert for Bangladesh became a big-selling live album and film. Still licking their wounds from the recent Isle of Wight debacle, the directors of Fiery Creations seized the opportunity of staging a British version to aid famine relief in Bangladesh and raising themselves out of the financial mire. It was reputedly Farr who approached the Surrey County Cricket Club, Surrey CCC, leaseholders from the Duchy of Cornwall, of the Oval Cricket Ground in Kennington, southeast London, after hearing of the club's own financial difficulties. Founded in 1845, the Surrey CCC and the Oval had over 120 years of illustrious sporting history. The Oval staged the first FA Cup final on March 16, 1872, and the first England international test match against Australia 5 years later. However, dwindling attendances, cutbacks, and the cancellation of the 1970 South Africa cricket tour were threatening its continued operation. To Farr, the Oval, being centrally located and able to hold over 30,000 visitors, was an attractive proposition. For the Surrey CCC, Farr's offer of £3,000 guarantee was like the cavalry riding in. An agreement was made between the Surrey CCC and Buffalo Concert Presentations Limited, the new company Farr and Folks hastily formed, to stage a one-day event named Goodbye Summer on Saturday the 18th of September, a week after Surrey triumphed at the first county championship at Southampton and a month after India beat England by 4 wickets in the third test at the Oval. A total of 10 artists were lined up for as many hours, all for a mere £1.25 admission. The UK had gone decimal that February. When announced, the news was met with disdain by some older members, forcing the Surrey CCC's secretary, Geoffrey Howard, on the defensive. It's better that people should use the Oval than it be empty. We badly want to go on providing cricket here because we love it. If we can create a little bit of money by giving people what they like, it has to be good for cricket. If rock and roll can help salvage the financial situation at the Oval, then cricket should be in awe of rock and roll and not the other way around, a typically bullish Farr declared. Ironically, more people would see the concert than would have watched Surrey CCC's home games throughout the whole of that summer. Around the same time, the music press had reported that The Who would headline a free Hyde Park concert planned for September 4th. Restrictions imposed by the Greater London Council forced the group to pull out, although the show went ahead without them, albeit on a smaller scale, featuring the Jack Bruce Band, King Crimson, and Roy Harper. The Who were a prime choice to headline the Oval, not only because of their recent history with fiery creations at the Isle of Wight festivals and their indisputable ranking among the world's top rock acts, but also for their charitable leanings. The previous Christmas, they'd played an implosion concert at the Roundhouse in North London with a portion of the proceeds going to local charities. In the days leading up to the Oval show, the ground staff began post-season work on the middle pitch, overshadowed by the giant gasometers on the Oval's boundary. A 20-foot high-covered stage featuring several statues atop the roof and bearing a painted Rock at the Oval 1971 sign along its frontage was erected at the Vauxhall end. Various fiberglass statues, including the large painted chess pieces, decorated the perimeter. The finishing touch was 2 acres of coconut matting laid out over the turf. The late summer weather conditions were glorious. Although only 10,000 tickets had sold by the time the gates opened, a total of 40,000 packed into the Oval on September 18th, roughly 9,000 more than the official capacity. Many more took up vantage points in the surrounding high-rise blocks of council flats. The early arrivals took over the outfield, packing the area in front of the stage. Later attendees sat in the stands. Press and guests were back in the members' enclosure in the pavilion, roughly 500 yards across the pitch from the stage. Guests in the area immediately behind the stage included Screamin' Lord Sutch, Jack Bruce, and ex-Bonzo Dog Band drummer Legs Larry Smith, along with Who associates and friends such as Kit Lambert, Pete Rudge, Keith Altham, Billy Nichols, Mike McHenry, and Richard Barney Barnes. So first I'll show you this. Okay. So then, a quote from Richard Barnes, we have, "I got a lift from the Twickenham with Ronnie Lane of the Faces in his Land Rover. On the way, we picked up an American fan Ronnie knew who had this stuff he called fruit whiskey. It was Southern Comfort. We were drinking that, and I was well gone. I remember sitting backstage at the Oval in John Entwistle's brand new 20-foot-long Cadillac that he'd brought back from America on the QE2. It had a TV set, a bar, a fridge, and a tape machine with 10 loudspeakers in the back and 2 in the front. Typical John." Okay, and here you can see the photos real quick. Okay, we continue. The first one was Screamin' Lord Sutch chats with Pete Townsend, then Keith's PA, Peter Dougal Butler with Keith and Pete, Ronnie and Chrissy Wood with Pete, below Keith and Pete. Hold on just one moment. Ricky Farr and Jeff Dexter emceed throughout the day. Dexter started his career in the mid-60s DJing at clubs like the Orchid Ballroom in Purley and Tiles in central London, and later Middle-earth at the Roundhouse. He was also DJ/announcer at both the 1969 and 70 Isle of Wight festivals. At the Oval, Dexter was dressed for the occasion like his namesake, cricketing legend Lord Ted Dexter, in pads, cap, and jumper with a willow bat from Surrey CCC. And a quote from Jeff Dexter, "When I arrived early and was putting my sound gear together, a Surrey CCC representative said, 'You're a local, aren't you?' I told him that I'd grown up with only 300 yards away from the Oval, so they gave me the kit to wear." The day opened at 11 a.m. with country rock band Coach Eyes, followed by the Grease Band, Joe Cocker's former backing group, and the good time folk rock of Lindisfarne, whose second album, Fog on the Tyne, went to the top of UK album charts in early 1972. Hippie rock band Quintessence lulled the audience to sleep with their 45-minute set of Eastern-tinged chants. Mott the Hoople then woke them up with a short set of rabble-rousing rock and roll. The tempo and voltage reduced drastically for America, an acoustic harmony trio managed by Dexter, hence their inclusion on the show. The low-key vibe continued with Eugene Wallace, a largely unknown Irish singer-songwriter from whom Farr had discovered. Okay, and here's more photos for you to see. All right. Atomic Rooster, midway through the tour of the States, had flown back specially to do their progressive rock thing, but sound problems from the PA marred their set, as they did most of the opening acts. As the penultimate act, the Faces were on show stealing form, thanks to their recent intensive touring with America. Singer Rod Stewart wore a Granny Takes a Trip designed leopard print suit that was later auctioned to aid the Bangladesh charity. That week, Rod was at the number one in the LP charts, was at number one, with Every Picture Tells a Story, and was about to get even bigger with the hugely successful single Maggie May. Pete Buckland, the Faces roadie, said, "There were problems early in the set, particularly with monitors. It was a Charlie Watkins WEM system, every act other than The Who was using, that was cobbled together for the day, although after the first couple of numbers, in the Faces slot, it was okay out front." The Faces finished their set to uproarious cheers and were the only act to be brought back for an encore. Okay, quote from Pete Townsend is, "I got very drunk because the Faces knew how to have a good time. They were great fun. The only thing I really remember about the Oval was Rod Stewart kicking something like 40 footballs out into the crowd, which caused a bit of a problem because they kept bouncing up onto the stage when we were on." So, continues. The day had so far successfully run to a strict timetable, with only 15-minute intervals between acts, but an hour's wait ensued while the Who's road crew and stagehands assembled the massive 7.5-ton Sun PA system the band had bought at a cost of £20,000 on their recent American tour. We have 16 speaker cabinets with 14 radial horns, and the whole thing is driven by 12 320-watt slave amplifiers, the Who's soundman Bob Pridden informed Melody Maker. There is little doubt that it is one of the best PA systems in the world. This was proven when, much later than advertised, Farr and Dexter unanimously announced, "Now, a rock and roll band from Shepherd's Bush, The Who." After the band ran on stage, Pete launched into an impromptu guitar boogie which Keith got behind and to which Roger started improvising lyrics. John was presumably too busy fiddling with his bass rig to join in on this short intro jam, something The Who usually didn't do and which was probably just a means of testing the PA. A short pause and then the whole band slammed into Summertime Blues and Entwistle's My Wife off the recently released Who's Next, with considerable gusto, while people sitting back on the pitch chanted, "Down, down," at those standing up in front of the stage. Pete took the mic. "We'd like to play something from what is currently riding high at number 7 in the charts on Who's Next, and it's a song called Love Ain't for Keeping." He then adopted a comically lecherous voice to intone, "Especially not on a night like this one, ho ho ho," adding, in reference to his surroundings, "I'll see you around the silly mid-off after." Okay, and here's more photos, by the way. Okay. Following 2 early hits, I Can't Explain and Substitute, Roger introduced Bargain, mentioning how BBC Radio 1 DJ Dave Kid Jensen had mistakenly called the album Who's Turn Next. Pete talked about his fancy white stage outfit while introducing Behind Blue Eyes and hinted at what might follow when teasing, "You can have me guitar after, you can pick it clean." Before Won't Get Fooled Again, he asked the hired security to "leave the angels alone, lads," in reference to the Hells Angels policing the stage. While the bikers were mercifully placid, it's incredible to consider such an insouciant attitude to security at such a large gathering after the violence occurring throughout the Altamont Festival in California 2 years earlier. A blast from the Who's past came with their recently revived cover of Marvin Gaye's "Baby Don't You Do It," which stretched out into a lengthy workout showcasing John and Keith. A crowd-pleasing sample from Tommy followed with Pinball Wizard and See Me Feel Me, the latter featuring giant Klieg lights shown into the audience, which always brought them to their feet. My Generation segged into the as-yet unreleased Naked Eye, which in turn led into an elongated Magic Bus. As the song reached a crescendo, Moon grabbed Jeff Dexter's cricket bat and attempted to drum with it. After attempting a few cymbal washes, he lobbed it into the audience. Dexter was horrified. Jeff Dexter, quote, "It was from Stuart Surridge, the company on Borough High Street, who made the best cricket bats. The Surrey CCC were okay about it. They took it quite well. I gave them the pants and everything back, but I didn't get the bat. I wanted to keep it because, being from South London, it was a part of my life. I was furious, so I got stuck into Keith's brandy." As Magic Bus thundered on with Roger blowing a harmonica, Pete brought proceedings to a close. Watching from stage right, next to John's bass stack, Melody Maker reviewer Charles Charlesworth observed, "Inevitably, Townsend's guitar, a brand new Gibson brought for the day, was sacrificed to the crowd. He hammered it to pieces with the mic stand and took a flying leap into his stack. The wreckage was thrown into the crowd as Moon stood up and literally walked through his drum kit." The show was over, with the four assembled at the front of the stage, clowning and acknowledging the thunderous applause. Farr announced, "As you can see, an encore is impossible. We have drums everywhere." As they go to their dressing room, "Please say an incredible thank you to The Who." The Rock at the Oval event raised a total profit of £18,336, with The Who donating 25% of the gross box office receipts, and the Surrey CCC receiving a much-needed £4,210. The Oval itself proved an ideal natural venue for staging a rock concert of this magnitude, wrote Charlesworth. The unlikely partnership of rock business and the establishment of the cricketing world paid off handsomely. "I have never seen such a large crowd so perfectly behaved," Bernard Coleman, committee member of the Surrey CCC, told the South London Press. "It was highly successful and absolutely first class." The Folk Brothers went on to promote the London Rock and Roll Show at Wembley Stadium in 1972, as well as two further Oval shows with Frank Zappa, Hawkwind and the Jeff Beck Group headlining the first, and a fortnight later, the Melody Maker Pull Awards concert featuring Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Wishbone Ash, Genesis, and Focus. The Oval was the precursor to other major one-day events held throughout the 70s at Charlton Athletic Football Ground and Wembley Stadium starring The Who, as well as the commencement of the band's charitable work, which has manifested itself most prominently in Roger Daltrey's involvement with the Teenage Cancer Trust. As Pete Townsend told Niaz Alam of the Dhaka Tribune in 2019, "The thing about Bangladesh was these were our people. The Bangladeshis tended to work very hard, so we respected them. We adored them, and we wanted to help. We were honored to be able to help." So this was written by Andy Neal in April of 2025. So we've got more photos over here. The second being a brand new Gibson bought for the day was sacrificed to the crowd. And then got a little bit more on the last page here. So the Pi Mobile recording unit next to the Oval stage, and Philip Newell with the 3M M23 8-track tape recorder. So how is that? Recording the Oval. To maximize potential proceeds for the Bangladesh charity, it was arranged for much of the day at the Oval to be recorded for a future various artists' release. The 8-track Pi Mobile recording unit, which had been used for various concert recordings, including The Who's Live at Leeds, was hired for the occasion. Glyn Johns, who recorded both The Who and The Faces at Olympic Studios, oversaw the operation, with the Pi team of chief engineer Vic Mail, assisted by tape ops Neville Crozier, Kenny Denton, and Philip Newell. And a quote from Philip Newell, "The recording equipment used at the Oval consisted of a portable 3M M23 8-track tape recorder, which weighed about 70 kilograms in 3 separate pieces, and could only record on 1-inch tape for about half an hour between reel changes. It cost about the same as the average house price in London at that time. The mixing console was also supposedly portable, but each of the 3 pieces weighed about 100 kilograms. It was a Neve Series 80 model with 24 input channels and 8 output groups, and was firmly bolted into the mobile recording truck. The microphones were a mixture of Neumann, AKG, and Sennheiser. It was all among the very finest recording equipment for the early 70s. Normally, when Pi were asked to do a mobile recording, the sheer cost of hiring the company to do it ensured that there was good cooperation from the stage management. However, it was explained to us that at the Oval that, in this case, The concert itself took absolute priority. That is to say, we were recording the concert as opposed to attempting to make the best live recording that we could of the bands. Despite this, we still strove to achieve the best results possible under the circumstances. During the afternoon performances, things went reasonably well, but before The Who went on stage in the evening, some of the microphones had been carefully positioned during the changeover, were moved by members of the crew for some reason, and perhaps also by Keith Moon. This fact became evident at the brief sound check, but try as we might, the security people would not let us go back on the stage once the show had started, for anything. The recording would have clearly been better if we had had more cooperation from the stage, but The Who's performance was certainly well received by the public, which was the primary goal. After the concert, during a brief playback inside the Pie-mobile, the members of the band accepted that the recording was a fair reflection of the event, but I never knew what ultimately happened to the 8-track tapes because I left Pie soon after. So this is from Philip Newell's book, Gaining My Virginity. Audio engineer Richard Whittaker, who, with Bob Pridden, mixed the original 1-inch analog reels for this release, states, "The tapes were in reasonably good physical condition and required very little restoration. The recording itself contained intermittent technical issues during the early part of the set. Pete's mic feed wasn't patched in when he made the first between-song stage announcements. I tried to fix this using what was available on the open mics, but there was a considerable amount of electrical interference and feedback which I assume was caused by the outdoor venue setting, and the enormous beast that was the Who's PA system. The performance itself is absolutely superb, though, with all 4 band members on form and on fire throughout." So, that is what all is in the booklet that comes with this new release. Hopefully that was helpful to some of you who may not physically have it yet or may not end up with it. So I'm going to go ahead and start listening to this thing and start giving my thoughts on each track as I listen to it. Okay, so that first track, So Glad to See You, even though it's so short, I really wish it were longer though, gives a good gist of sound quality wise what all this release is going to be like. And actually, yeah, this is a considerable upgrade from the bootleg versions of this that I've heard before. So I'm like, all right, okay, I'm here for it. But I have to say, I'm just like so mind blown that just off the cuff that Pete could just start playing something like that. Didn't exist yet, at least until that moment, just off the top of his head. And Keith can just pounce in and so perfectly match it, and not in like a boring, just filler drummer kind of way. Like, no, I mean, with Keith, nothing was ever half-assed, right? And this is no exception to that. And then Roger also pouncing in and seemingly knowing what to do with it. Granted, whole track's only like a minute long, and only about half of that minute is this, but wow. I think it really does say quite a bit about just how in sync this band was at that moment in time, and it's very impressive to hear. So the second track on here is Summertime Blues, which actually this is a very similar arrangement to the one on Live at the Isle of Wight. Not quite identical, but very, very similar, which makes sense for the time period of when this was recorded and everything. So, I mean, the only thing that's really a downgrade is just even with the improved sound quality of this release, it's still not up to par with Isle of Wight, but that's okay. Just taking it for what it is. I mean, it's played amazingly well. It's a little different from the Live at Leeds version of it. Like I said, it's more in line with Isle of Wight, but that's cool though. So, I mean, it's good that they basically essentially opened the show with that, because it starts out high energy, like right after the little like impromptu intro and all that. So, very well done. So third track in is this really awesome extended version of John Entwistle's My Wife from Who's Next, which was still very new at the time, as we already discussed it from the booklet, but oh my god, this is like the most kick-ass version I think I have ever heard of this song. And I don't think I've ever heard another really extended version of it quite like this. This one goes for 6.5 minutes, actually. So I'm just like, damn. Alright. I mean, as somebody who was super bummed at never getting to see that live and missing it by 6 days, because that's when he checked out, I've always been bummed that I never got to see that one in particular live, so finding a really, really particularly awesome version of that just absolutely makes my whole day. Just throwing that out there, and just everything, like, everyone was top of their game in this one. I mean, John, obviously, but, like, Pete comes in with, like, shredding guitar solos, Mooney's doing his thing. Roger is, like, actually more pronouncedly trying to sing along backup vocals on it. I'm just like, okay, I'm here for this. I am here for this. Like, so far, this is the fave. This is the fave. And looking at track listing on here, it's probably going to remain the fave, knowing me. So fourth track in is Love Ain't For Keeping, also from Who's Next, which admittedly in its album version form I always felt was the weakest track on that entire album. I think a lot of people would agree with me on that too. I mean, it doesn't mean I hate it or anything, just it's literally the least favorite of the ones on that album. That said, hearing how it was approached live in this format was transformative for me. I don't know how it's so vastly different, but it is, though. It's like, it feels so much more involved. I mean, maybe it's because the pace is a little bit up, being a live version and all. Keith's drumming is naturally beyond manic, especially towards the end, but I feel that adds to the energy of it. But just in general, it doesn't feel like so much of an almost throwaway kind of song on this particular version of it. So I'm just like, oh, okay, so this might actually possibly change my opinion of the song in general, maybe, after having heard it live here. So the fifth track takes a pivot and goes straight from Who's Next all the way back to the very beginning. Switches gears to Can't Explain, which is a little bit weird right after hearing those tracks that at that point were brand new, but they still did it just as energized as ever here. So, I mean, it's not a bad performance of it whatsoever. And it fits in with the set list, given that what it's followed immediately by is the very, very first one, Substitute. So next song in is, in fact, Substitute, which I'm not sure if it was intentional or if it just worked out that way, but I feel like the bass is heavier on this particular mix than it often was on stage for this particular song, because I kept finding myself really having my attention brought back to Entwistle's rotosound strings. Is like, when you know the sound of them, you know them a mile away, but especially in the "with a substitute for another guy," pay attention to the bass line right in that part every time it gets to it, because it's so pronounced and so badass every single time it gets to it. But this is probably going to quickly become like a favorite version of live performances of Substitute that I think I've ever heard, just because of specifically that detail. So, seventh track in, we've gone right back to the stuff from Who's Next, and oh my god, I didn't think My Wife could be topped, but it was just topped. Holy shit, after I played it, I had to just take a moment and absorb what I just heard. Like, this absolutely batshit crazy 7-minute version of Bargain, like, starts out with like such a clean guitar intro to it, and then just Keith blows the fucking doors off with like a drum explosion and does not stop for the entire 7 minutes worth of it. And it's almost like a power exchange between he and Pete going back and forth through the whole thing. And at points where you least expect it, in comes Entwistle into the fray as well. And you're just like letting all of this hit you like a fucking truck. And I mean, the only spot where you practically even get to take a breath is the little bit that Pete sings in the middle that slows it down for just moments. Where, I mean, it's always strange when Pete sings softly, because it almost feels like he's unsure of himself whenever he does. Because, like, if he does the more screamy type lyric, not like Roger, but I mean, you know the difference between Pete's two vocal modes that he tends to sing between. One he feels confident with, the other it is clear, not so much. And there is like a moment of waver towards the end of it here. but it is quickly forgiven and forgotten the minute everything just floods back in. I mean, towards the end of it, there is like a slight flub in the guitar work towards the end of it, but just, it doesn't matter. It so doesn't matter. This is by far, hands down, best version of Bargain I think I've ever heard. Okay, so 8th track, officially the halfway point of the show, exactly halfway because there's 15 tracks, so like smack dab in the middle because odd number. I knew damn well it seemed weird that Pete had been so unusually quiet the whole show leading up to this point, but I figured if there's a point he is going to sneak in, it would be here, and I wasn't wrong, both before and after Behind Blue Eyes. He's busy having a pretentious wank fest yet again, so you guys know exactly what I'm talking about with him. I guess because Who's Next is also just so freshly new at the point when this was recorded. This is actually a not that polished version of it, at least in regards to his playing. I'm gonna be honest. It's not a bad rendition overall, but if we're like going through paying attention instrument by instrument and just how all of them interplay in this, yeah, Pete's playing's a little rough, especially in the intro. He fucks up a few times. The harmonies on this, though, are quite interesting because I feel like both Pete and John can be heard individually of each other harmonizing behind Roger's vocals here. I'm like, oh, usually you hear one more than the other, but I feel like you can pick them both out in this one, so it makes it interesting. I'll give credit where credit's due. So the 9th track, Won't Get Fooled Again. See, I'm so used to hearing it towards the end of shows that it's almost weird hearing it like right near the middle, but on this one, oh my god, even for it being as new of a song as it was at the time, this encapsulates just how powerful of a live band they were at that moment in time. This is a great snapshot that I feel is very, very representative of what all they were in that moment, the raw power just behind all of it. I mean, I think I finally decided how to describe Moon's drumming throughout this whole thing, but like, this is a very good example of it on this track. He's doing a lot of his machine gun drumming, like, if you know, you know. But it's like he's hitting everything as hard as he humanly can in front of him, and honestly, he's been doing it whole show, and he's never really slowed down at any point. He's never, like, started hitting him a little softer. No, it's just solid across the board, just all the way turned to 11. And frankly, so is Entwistle's playing on this too. It's almost like he is also trying to play as loud as he can, even though with the way that the amps are set up, he is not overpowering Pete or anything, but it's just like, okay, these two are going at it as loud as they can. Pete's also trying to at the same time, and then Roger's screaming over the whole thing. It's just like, damn, just the absolute raw, sheer power behind this is just mind-blowing. So, 10th track in, yeah, we're already 2/3 of the way through this album, is kind of interestingly placed. It's a cover of Baby Don't You Do It, which, I mean, they frequently did in the early days of The Who, but hearing it at this particular era strikes as interesting both for it being 1971, but also placing it in the middle of such much more modern tracks. I was like, okay, that was a choice. It's a very frenetic version of it that just goes and goes hard. Although the track itself is 8 minutes 48 seconds long, there is a lengthy intro and outro piece on it, so in reality the song itself goes for about 8 of those minutes and the rest of it's just talking, but it's interesting. I wouldn't say it's necessarily even the best version of the song, but it's, I don't know, it's not bad though, but it's another one where it's just like, musical power struggle is the best way to describe what this one sounds like. So the 11th track in is Pinball Wizard, and there's a bizarre phenomena with it because it feels somehow rushed. But then you look at the runtime on it, and it's 2 minutes 57 seconds, which is exactly the same runtime as the album version, I believe. So I guess they didn't rush through anything. I don't know why it feels so rushed. Maybe after just that really long rendition of the song before, it feels really short by comparison, maybe. But I mean, this is a really good version of the song, not gonna lie. They'd only been doing Tommy for 2 years at this point, which, I mean, if it had been rushed, it would make sense, since 2 years is a long time to be touting the one album, but once something's a classic, it's a classic, and I don't think they ever really dropped Pinball Wizard out of it, understandably. It became their bread and butter, so I'm glad it's there. I'm glad they did a good job with it here. Okay, so the 12th track is the See Me, Feel Me, Listening to You medley, which, I mean, they've done that as long as they've done Tommy on stage. Nothing particularly notable about this one being different. It's not bad or anything, it's just like the standard way. They tended to play this around this era. Pretty much it was one of those things where if you saw them do it at one show, they'd probably do it roughly the same in this era. So, nothing too groundbreaking. There's like a couple points where it's like ever so slightly different, but it's so similar that's like, it's pretty samey. But I mean, we all love Tommy, so not complaining, just an observation. So track 13, see, we are getting near the end at this point, is My Generation, and it is everything you would hope and expect, especially from this particular era of The Who with performing that song, because it's loud, it's dirty, it's gritty, it's fast, it hits hard. It's pretty much, it's giving me vibes of like the Monterey Pop and Woodstock versions of it. Very similar, but also, again, a great time capsule to encapsulate this exact snapshot in time. Okay, I have to talk quiet to finish out the last little bit of the video, so everyone else in the house went to bed. Anyway, the second to last song on here is Naked Eye, which isn't too uncommon for them to have been performing around this era, because I think they did it on the 70 tour, as well as up through 72, then not again till 79, and then they brought it back in the 2000s. But this performance here, it's not entirely different from that of Live at Isle of Wight, not that entirely different from any of the other iconic performances where they did this one. But what it does do is that it gives like a perfect showcasing of each of the members, their like strongest abilities within the band. So it makes this like a really strong showcasing of everyone's talent, which makes perfect sense for why they kept coming back to this one over and over again. And finally, the last track on the album is Magic Bus, which, despite the runtime being 9.5 minutes, it's only about 8-ish minutes for the song itself. AKA John Entwistle's least favorite song to play, because it's basically just him strumming the D string for like 8 minutes solid, with the exception of the bass solo. That said, this is an interesting version of Magic Bus, because it's got like some alternate little bits of dialogue in there, alternate little fills here and there. It is an intriguing version of the song, I'll give it that, because a lot of times I'm kind of with Entwistle, where just, it's such a long song that, yes, I realize it's a fan fave, but on the other hand, I do not have the attention span for it a lot of the time. So I'm like, I'm kind of with him, but this one's an exception because I found it interesting, because it's not just as samey as a lot of performances of this particular song tend to be. The outro from the announcer on the stage when they're all done destroying their instruments and everything. I feel like they shouldn't have faded it out while he was still mid-speech, so that's a little bit of a bummer, but overall, this CD surprised the hell out of me that it ended up being as good as it was, because again, just looking at that track listing, I wasn't initially sold on it just from that alone. But I knew there had to be a reason they were putting this out. Otherwise, they wouldn't bother if it was just run-of-the-mill. So I'm glad they did. And frankly, I think I am rating this a 9 out of 10. And that is saying something, because I'm pretty highly critical when I do these reviews. This is definitely worthy of the praise. It's worthy of the time of day. It's worthy of your money. Check this out if you haven't already. You'll thank me later. So anyway, that's gonna be about it from me for this one. So as usual, you know what to do. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like. If you're not already and you'd like to be, click subscribe, hit that notification bell icon so you never miss an upload. Leave comments down below. Make sure you're following my social media accounts, my Facebook fan page, my Twitter, my Instagram, my eBay, my Reddits, everything and more. It's all down below. And if you like what I do here on this channel and you'd like to help support it, the donation link, as always, is down in the description. Get your name on the end card for a month from the time of donating. So it is well past midnight at this point, so it is now officially Keith Moon's birthday, and we'll probably be going up what is now today. So anyway, till it goes up, see ya.